Commander Heianwu watched the enemy ships appear from nowhere like bright shooting stars. The Pirathi fleet was huge, hundreds of ships that glowed like tiny suns in the empty black space. Each alien ship had special shields that could stop even the biggest human bombs. "Sir, they're calling us," said Minna from her communication desk. Her voice stayed calm, even though they were badly outnumbered. "They want us to give up right now." "It's the same message they send to everyone they attack," Heianwu looked at Jinho, his battle planning officer. The young man was already working on his computer, finding the best ways to escape. This wasn't because they were scared. Humans had learned long ago that smart fighters pick where they want to fight. "Tell all our colonies to leave now," Heianwu ordered. "Get all the normal people to the hidden bases." Dr. So-young looked up from studying the alien ships. "Commander, these energy readings are crazy. They're not just using hot gas weapons. They're using actual pieces of stars as ammunition." On the main screen, they watched the biggest Pirathi ship aim at an old mining station that humans had already left empty. The station didn't blow up like normal. Instead, it just disappeared completely, eaten by tiny starfire. The message was simple: give up or burn. The alien weapon was terrifying. Where the mining station used to be, there was now just empty space. Not even metal pieces or dust remained. The starfire had consumed everything down to the smallest parts. Heianwu felt his crew tense up behind him as they realized what they were facing. "Send the signal to our fleet," Heianwu said quietly. "Start Operation Nightfall. Let them keep their bright lights." The human ships began moving away from the aliens, going deeper into the cold outer parts of the solar system. To the Pirathi commander watching from his burning ship, this probably looked like another easy win. It's just another weak species running away when faced with real power, but the aliens didn't understand something important about humans. When humans ran away, it wasn't because they were afraid. It was because they were getting ready for something much worse. Jinho's fingers moved quickly across his controls. Retreat path confirmed. All ships moving to Rally Point 7. "How long until we reach the Shadow Zone?" Heianwu asked. 20 minutes at current speed," Jinho replied. "The Pirathi are following, but keeping their distance. They think we're beaten." Mina received another message from the aliens. "Sir, they're demanding we stop running and surrender, they say. Resistance will only make our punishment worse." Dr. So-young shook her head as she studied more data. "They really don't understand us at all. Look at their formation. They're staying in the light, near the sun and planets. They think bright equals safe." "What?" "Of course they do," Heianwu said. "They're creatures of fire and light. What? They probably can't imagine that darkness could be a weapon." Human fleet moved past the outer planets, heading toward the cold, empty space between star systems. Here, where sunlight was weak and space was mostly empty, normal species saw nothing useful. But humans had learned to see opportunity in the dark places others feared. "Contact from Shadow Command," Mina reported. "Admiral Taman confirms all stealth units are in position and ready." Heianwu smiled for the first time since the aliens arrived. "Good. The Pirathi brought their fire to our home. They're about to learn what humans do to uninvited guests." Behind them, the Pirathi fleet followed confidently. Their ships blazed with stolen starfire, lighting up space for millions of kilometers in every direction. They had conquered dozens of worlds the same way, arriving with overwhelming force, demanding surrender, then burning anyone who refused. But as the human ships disappeared into the darkness between worlds, the Pirathi were about to discover something new. They were about to meet a species that had learned to fight in the cold, empty spaces where their fire couldn't reach. Sir, Jinho said, reading his instruments. "Pirathi fleet is entering the Shadow Zone. They're still following us." "Perfect," Heianwu replied. "Signal all units. The real battle begins now." In the darkness ahead, invisible to Pirathi sensors, hundreds of human ships waited. These weren't the obvious military vessels the aliens had seen. These were something new, ships that used the darkness itself as both shield and weapon. The Pirathi had brought fire to humanity's doorstep, expecting another easy conquest. Instead, They were about to learn that some species don't fear the dark. Some species make the darkness their ally, as the last human ship crossed into the Shadow Zone. Hai and Wu prepared to show the fire-wielding aliens something they had never seen before. Something that would make them question everything they thought they knew about power, about war, and about the cold, empty spaces between the stars. The real fight was about to begin, and it would be fought on humanity's terms. In humanity's element, the endless dark that existed between the lights, Admiral Taman floated in zero gravity inside his secret command ship called the Void's Edge. He watched the enemy through special hidden sensors as the Pyrethi aliens took control of human colonies. The alien ships moved together like a dance, their hot engines leaving bright trails of burning gas that you could see from very far away. "Look how pretty they are," said Captain Eugene, talking to him from another hidden ship called Event Horizon. "All those bright lights and hot energy. They might as well be shouting, 'Here we are' to everyone in space." Hay-1, who steered their ship, worked with strange machines that controlled dark matter. Around their ship, space itself began to bend and twist in weird ways. She created pockets of total darkness where even light couldn't get through. The Pyrethi knew how to use fire as a weapon, but humans had learned to use the empty spaces between. Tiny particles. "Ghost Squadron ready to fight," said Wing Commander Dong Han over the radio. His fighter pilots sat in ships that were very strange. They were not completely real, but not completely gone either. They existed somewhere in between. "We can see where the Pyrethi patrol ships go. They're looking for electric signals." Taman smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Of course they are. They're trying to find ships that burn fuel, make heat, and create light. They don't know that we learned to love the cold darkness." The first attack happened so fast that nobody saw it coming. The Pyrethi sensors couldn't detect anything wrong until their ships just started vanishing. They didn't explode or break apart. They were just eaten by growing balls of nothingness. Human ships appeared out of folds in space itself, their metal sides as black as the empty space between stars. Lieutenant Ji-hoon listened to the enemy radio messages. "Sir, they're saying this is impossible. Their protective shields are made to stop anything that shoots energy or force at them." "But we don't shoot anything at them," Taman answered. "We take things away from them instead." The Pyrethi fleet tried to fight back against attacks that seemed to come from empty air. But this was when humans showed their real secret weapon. While the aliens had learned to make and control energy, humans had mastered something much scarier: entropy. That was the slow breaking down that happened to everything in the universe over time. The alien ships spun around in confusion, their bright engines blazing as they tried to find enemies they couldn't see. Their commanders shouted orders through radio signals that the humans could easily hear. "They're firing randomly into space," reported Lieutenant Ji-hoon. "Their thermal scanners can't find our ships." "Because we're colder than space itself," Taman said. "We don't make heat, we absorb it." Another group of Pyrethi ships suddenly aged 1,000 years in just seconds. Their bright metal turned to dust. Their engines went quiet. Crews inside grew old and died before they could even scream. It was like watching time itself become a weapon. Captain Eugene's voice came through the radio, excited and scared at the same time. "Admiral, did you see that? We just made an entire enemy squadron. Experienced the end of time." Hay-1 checked her instruments. "The dark matter fields are stable. We can maintain this effect for hours." Wing Commander Dong Han's ghost fighters moved through space like shadows. They appeared inside the enemy formation, fired weapons that didn't use energy, then disappeared again. The Pyrethi couldn't fight what they couldn't understand. "Sir, the enemy is trying to retreat," Ji-hoon reported. "But they don't know which direction is safe." "None of them are safe," Taman replied. "We're not hiding in space. We are space. We've become the darkness between their bright lights." The battle was unlike anything seen before in the galaxy. The Pyrethi had always won by bringing more fire and energy than their enemies. But humans fought by taking energy away, by making things cold and dark and empty. One by one, the bright alien ships went silent. Not because they were destroyed, but because they were being aged to death. Their nuclear reactors ran out of fuel. In minutes, instead of years. Their weapons grew too old to fire. Their crews became dust inside ships that crumbled like ancient ruins. "This is terrifying," whispered Hay-1 as she watched the destruction. "We're not just fighting them. We're making them experience the death of the universe." "They brought a stellar fire to burn us out," Taman said quietly. "We brought the cold that comes after all fires die." The surviving Pirathi ships tried to escape, but they were trapped in bubbles of accelerated time. Space around them had become a maze of entropy fields, where everything aged and died faster than it could be replaced. As the last enemy ship crumbled to cosmic dust, the human fleet remained invisible in the darkness. They had proven something that would echo across the galaxy, that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't what you can create, but what you can take away. The Pirathi had learned to steal fire from stars, but humans had learned to steal time itself, turning the universe's own ending into a blade that cut through anything that dared to threaten their survival. General Seo-jin stood in the underground war room far below the broken city of Seoul. Around him, glowing screens showed battles happening in 12 different star systems at once. The Pyrothi aliens had gotten angry about humanity's sneaky attacks. Now they were using weapons so powerful they could break entire planets apart. Whole human colonies had been turned into melted glass, but luckily most people had escaped just before the attacks came. "They're getting scared," said Colonel Yoonji as she looked at the battle reports. 3 more star systems have gone completely dark. They're trying to force us out by destroying every place we might hide. Dr. Kung Ho was the boss of the time weapons team. He looked up from his math work with worried eyes. "Sir, the entropy speed-up machines are ready to use. But once we turn them on, ... He stopped talking for a moment. "We'll be changing how space and time work in those areas forever." On the biggest screen, they watched video of a Pirathi warship as big as a small moon. The alien ship was covered in fire from a dozen stolen stars. The aliens had figured out how to turn suns into bullets, using the fire from stars as weapons. "They want to burn us completely out of existence," Seo-jin said quietly. "They think fire can beat everything. It's time to show them what happens after all fires go out." He gave the order through the special quantum radio that could talk to ships anywhere in space instantly. In the Centauri star system, Commander Wuson turned on humanity's first entropy weapon. What happened next was immediate and scary. A whole group of Pirathi battleships aged 10,000 years in just 10 seconds. Their metal sides crumbled into space dust. Captain the Jin was commanding a secret ship called Heat Death. She watched through her sensors as an entire enemy fleet just stopped working. Their fusion engines slowed down and died. Their plasma weapon tubes went cold, and the alien crew members fell down as their bodies aged faster than nature intended. "Oh my God," whispered her science officer, Minsu. "We're not just killing them, we're making them experience the end of time itself." The effect was horrible to watch. The Pirathi ships that had been bright and powerful just moments before became old and broken. Their hulls developed cracks like ancient buildings. Their weapons stopped working as the metal became too old and weak to hold together. Inside the ships, alien crew members aged from young warriors to elderly beings to dust in mere seconds. "We're getting reports from all fronts," said Colonel Yoonji, reading incoming messages. "The entropy weapons are working too well. Entire enemy fleets are just ... dying of old age." Dr. Kung Ho watched his instruments with growing concern. "Time distortion fields are stable, but they're also permanent. Those areas of space will age everything faster for millions of years." On the main screen, they could see the result of their weapon. Where once there had been a mighty Pirathi fleet, now there was only empty space filled with ancient metal dust and the faded energy signatures of long-dead stars. The aliens' own captured starfire had aged and cooled until it was just cold gas drifting in space. "They're trying to retreat," reported another officer. "But they're having trouble. Some of their ships are getting caught in the time fields and aging before they can escape." Seo-jin felt a cold weight in his stomach. The weapon worked better than they had hoped, but it was also more terrible than they had imagined. They weren't just defeating the enemy, they were erasing them from time itself. "Sir, incoming message from the Pirathi command ship," said the communications officer. They're asking what we are. Tell them, Seogin said slowly, that we are what comes after the fire burns out. We're the cold that waits at the end of everything. The war had changed into something that had never happened before. In the galaxy, it wasn't just about who had better weapons or more ships. It had become a fight between the force that creates things and the force that ends them. The Pyrathy represented creation, fire, energy, and life. Humanity had become the representatives of entropy, cold, darkness, and the eventual end of all things. As more reports came in from across the galaxy, the truth became clear. Humanity had not just found a way to win the war, it found a way to become something that could end wars permanently by ending everything else. The Pyrathy had brought the fire of stars to burn humanity out of existence. In response, humanity had brought something much more frightening. The promise that everything, even stars, even time itself, would eventually grow old and die. And they had learned how to make that natural process happen very, very fast. The war was no longer about territory or survival. It had become a battle between the beginning and the end of everything, with humanity choosing to become the force. That brought all things to their final rest. Fleet Admiral Jae-sung stood on the control deck of his huge warship called Absolute Zero. His ship was floating at the very edge of Earth's solar system, watching the final battle that would decide everything. The Pyrathy aliens had collected all their remaining ships for one last desperate attack. They planned to turn Earth's own sun into a giant weapon that would destroy the entire solar system. Enemy ships getting close to attack distance, said Captain Soo-jin from her battle control station. They're powering up their star control machines. The energy readings are higher than anything we've ever seen. Through the big window on the ship's front, they could see the Pyrathy superweapon. It was enormous and looked like a metal flower. With huge petals, these petals were designed to catch and redirect the energy from stars. If the aliens succeeded, they would turn the sun into a giant laser beam that could kill everything in half the galaxy. Start Operation Starfall, Jae-sung commanded. Lieutenant Hanbul put her hands on the dark matter control buttons. Around the human fleet, space itself started to change. You couldn't see the change with your eyes because it was too deep and basic for normal sight. But the ship's sensors could detect that reality itself was being rewritten. The Pyrathy weapon began to work. Massive streams of energy shot out from the metal flower toward Earth's sun. The aliens were trying to make the sun unstable, so it would explode in a nova that would burn everything in the solar system to nothing. Sir, they're succeeding, reported Lieutenant Park from the science station. Solar activity is increasing rapidly. If this continues, our sun will go nova in less than an hour. But Jae-sung remained calm. Continue the dark matter injection. Let them try to weaponize our star. Dr. Guyun watched her instruments with amazement. Admiral, the stellar. Mass is becoming unstable, but not the way they planned. We're not letting them turn our sun into a weapon. We're making it age faster. The Pyrathy superweapon fired its main attack, sending a focused beam of solar energy toward the human fleet. But something impossible happened. The energy just faded away. The dark matter fields around the human ships didn't block the attack, or bounce it back. Instead, they aged the energy itself, turning the hot plasma into cold, scattered particles from a star that had already died. Impossible, came the translated voice of the Pyrathy commander over the radio. Our stellar fire cannot be stopped. You're right, Jae-sung replied calmly. It can't be stopped. But it can be aged until it's no longer fire. Commander Yen-woo led the secret attack squadron. His ships appeared from quantum shadows right inside the enemy formation. The beginning star extinction process, he reported. What happened next would be remembered forever as the moment when humanity proved they were willing to do anything to survive. The human fleet didn't just destroy the Pyrathy superweapon. They began systematically making the stars in nearby systems go out forever. One by one, suns that had been burning for billions of years went dark. They didn't explode into supernovas or collapse into black holes. They simply stopped existing as their nuclear fires were aged beyond any possibility of continuing to burn. My God, whispered Captain Soo-jin. We're not just killing their fleet, we're turning off the lights of The universe itself? The Piracy ships found themselves floating in growing bubbles of absolute darkness. Not just the absence of light, but places where even the background radiation of space had been drained away. These aliens had always lived in the light and heat of stars. Now they were trapped in cold emptiness, where no energy could exist. "They're trying to retreat," reported the communications officer. "But their ships are having trouble. They need stellar energy to power their engines. And we've created dead zones where no energy can survive." Lieutenant Hanbull watched her, controls with growing horror at what they were doing. "Sir, the entropy fields are spreading. We're creating permanent dead zones in space-time. These areas will stay dark for billions of years. The Piracy brought fire to burn us out of existence," Jasoon said quietly. "We brought something infinitely worse. We brought the end that waits for everything." The alien superweapon, designed to turn stars into weapons, crumbled as its own stellar energy was aged into nothingness. The massive metal flower became ancient and brittle, falling apart like a relic from the beginning of time, receiving surrender signal from all remaining Piracy ships. The communications officer announced. Through the main window, they could see the result of their victory. Where once there had been bright stars lighting up space, now there were only dark voids. As the human fleet had proven that they feared nothing, it's not even the death of light itself. The Piracy survivors floated in their dimming ships, surrounded by darkness that would last longer than most galaxies. They had brought the fire of stars to conquer humanity, but humanity had brought something that no one had ever imagined possible. The ability to turn off the universe itself, as the last enemy ship powered down in surrender, Jae-sung realized. They had won more than just a war. They had become something new and terrifying, something that could end not just lives or civilizations, but the very possibility of existence itself. Ambassador Mung-ho sat in a chair across from the last Piracy fleet commander, inside a space station, floating in what used to be the bright Vega star system. Now, only complete darkness surrounded them. This was a bubble of space-time where entropy itself had become a weapon, where the very idea of energy had been sucked away and destroyed. The Piracy alien, who used to be a creature made of living fire, now looked dim and weak. The glowing parts of his body barely gave off any light. These aliens had seen something that changed everything they thought they knew about how the universe worked. "We give up," the alien commander whispered. His voice came through a special machine that translated his alien words. We never understood.
Hey.
We thought fire was the strongest force in all of space." Colonial Defense Force nodded seriously.
Us?
"Fire burns very bright, but it always burns out in the end. We learn to accept what comes after the fire dies." Through the station's windows, they could see the edge of the entropy field. It was like a border where space-time itself had been changed forever. Beyond that invisible line, 7 whole star systems sat in perfect darkness. Their suns had been aged to death in just a few hours. "Your species scares us more than anything," the Piracy continued, his voice getting weaker. "You don't just destroy things, you unmake them. You take away the very possibility that they could ever exist." Myung-ho leaned forward in his chair. "We never wanted to become destroyers of light, but when you threatened to wipe us out completely, we proved something that even we didn't fully understand about ourselves. We're willing to drag our enemies into the empty void that exists beyond even death itself." Dr. Hung-sek worked at the science station, watching the quantum effects on his instruments. "The entropy fields are holding steady. The affected areas will stay in this condition for about 10 billion years. That's longer than most galaxies are expected to live." The peace treaty was signed in complete silence. They were surrounded by the darkness that humanity had brought to space itself. The Piracy agreed to leave the galaxy entirely, going beyond the rim where no stars existed. They would carry with them the terrible knowledge that somewhere in the universe lived a species that had mastered not just technology or war, but the basic forces that ended everything. The alien commander's bioluminescent organs flickered one. "Last time," as he spoke, "we conquered 47 star systems with our stellar fire. We thought we were the ultimate predators of the galaxy, but you You are something else entirely. You are the thing that comes after everything else ends. We tried to warn you, Captain Sujin said quietly. When you first arrived, we tried to negotiate. We offered to share our space peacefully. We were fools, the Pyrathy replied. We saw your retreat as weakness. We didn't understand that you were simply choosing your battlefield. You made the entire universe your weapon. As the last Pyrathy ships prepared to leave forever, their engines barely glowing in the artificial night, humanity had to face what they had become. They had won the war by proving they would rather rule over darkness than bow to alien fire. Myung-ho. The alien ships disappear into the distance, their lights growing smaller until they vanished completely. Do you think we did the right thing? He asked Captain Sujin. We survived, she answered. Our species continues to exist. But we also became something new, something that can turn off stars like light switches. Dr. Hung-sik looked up from his instruments. The entropy fields are spreading very slowly. At this rate, they'll eventually consume matter across several galactic sectors. We've essentially created zones of accelerated universal death. The space station floated in the artificial darkness, a tiny island of life surrounded by regions where existence itself had been aged beyond all possibility. Through the windows, they could see the sharp line where normal space ended and the entropy field began. On one side, distant stars still twinkled. On the other side, there was nothing but perfect blackness. The galaxy will remember this war, Myung-ho said slowly. Not as a battle between two civilizations, but as the day when one species proved that some things are worse than death, that humans were willing to become those things when survival was at stake. Over the following months, human philosophers and scientists would argue about whether they had saved their species or lost their souls. Some said they had become monsters. Others argued they had simply become what they needed to become to survive. But in the darkness between the dead stars, floating in regions where time itself moved faster and aged everything to dust, the answer seemed clear. Humanity had become something new and terrifying. They had become the species that lived in the spaces where light could not reach, where energy could not exist, where even the concept of existence itself had been drained away. The cold peace that followed would last for generations. And in that peace, humanity would have to learn to live with what they had become, the guardians of entropy, the masters of ending. The species that had chosen to embrace the final darkness rather than submit to alien fire, they had won, but the victory had changed them forever.